The default color for a empty flame game is black background. You can change this with the background color method. This technique is useful if you do not change the background color while you're playing the game. So you can access the material colors and set it to pink. Let's set up a sprite component so that we can test the background in different conditions. For example, we want to make sure that a sprite component can appear. So let's create an assets/images directory and drop a simple PNG image into the directory and alter the pubspec.yaml so that it knows where the image assets are. Run Flutter pub get if your editor does not automatically run it for you after you specify assets/images in pubspec.yaml. Declare a variable called girl as a sprite component. Specify her as late because we're going to need to load the image in the onload method. Make sure that the flame component library is imported. Then we're going to use a onload method, which is part of flame, to get the girl in there. We're going to have to override with the decorator onload, and because it's taking something from the future, it's going to be a future and it's going to be async because we want to make sure that the image is loaded from the local storage prior to going on to the next step. So the syntax is girl, which is the name of the variable that we just declared, and it's not supposed to be 2 equal signs. It's supposed to be only 1. That's a typo there on my screen. Don't make the same error. And then we specify the sprite. So we're going to have to load the sprite. And because it's going to take some time to load from disk, we're going to use await to wait for the sprite to load, and then specify the name of the file that we just added into our assets images directory. And we're going to set the size of the girl as a vector2 component, so 100. And then I'm going to have to completely stop the game and restart it after I fix that typo there. So initially it doesn't run, but if I stop the game and restart it, it will run. With the girl on the screen, we can now test the movement to make sure that the background layer is redrawing when the girl moves across the screen. So the girl, we can make her move with the update method, which is built into Flame. So this is part of the Flame game, and it's a method which will update. It's a loop. And it's using a specific time DT, but we're not going to use it just for simplicity. When you actually build your game, you should use the delta time, but we'll just do girl.x plus equals 1. To make our test with the girl a little bit easier, I'm going to set up some rudimentary bounds detection, and we'll set her direction. So she'll just be going right or left and just be bouncing off the ends of our game screen here. So we'll set a string for girl, and we'll set her to go right initially. So if the girl direction is right, we're going to increase her x coordinate so that it goes 1 pixel over every time she goes through this loop. At this point, we don't have anything to change the variable for girl direction. So when we initially do this, where she's just only going to go right, but we'll set up the left condition because we'll set up a conditional to check to see if she hits the right wall of your game in the future. So if she's going left, we're going to subtract 1 pixel from her x coordinate every time through this update loop. Again, the update loop is from Flame. It's a built-in game loop. To prevent her from completely disappearing from the screen when she hits the right edge, I'm going to set the anchor point. So the default anchor point is the upper left-hand corner of the sprite. But because the sprite is in a 1-to-1 aspect ratio, and there's some buffer because she's taller than she is wide, right? So it's a transparent background, but it's a one-to-one aspect. So she's going to disappear unless we switch the anchor point to the center of the sprite. So if she's over the edge of the screen, so the size is the size of the screen, the flame game, and the first component 0, so size left square bracket 0, right square bracket is the edge of the screen itself. And the left edge of the screen is 0. Right? So the upper left-hand side of your screen is 0, 0. So if she's on the X coordinate, if she goes below 0, that means she's going to be off the screen. And so we want her to bounce to the right. When she hits the right side of the screen, which we know from size 0, and that size is built into Flame, I didn't create it, we'll bounce her over to the left. And she was a little bit too high, so we're going to set the Y coordinate to 200. So now that we have our little test laboratory game world here, let's comment out that background color, because once you set it initially for the game, you won't be able to change it. So how do you change it? Like in mid-game, let's say that maybe she hits something, you want the background to be red. Well, you could try this render method, which is built into Flame Game, because you most likely already have this render method in there. And you could try to draw a color from the canvas in render. Let's see what happens. When you draw the color on the girl, so it's canvas.draw color, there's this blend property that you're gonna have to specify. And there's many different types of blend. So you could try to blend a tint onto your game with the girl, but this is probably not what you want to do right now. So we're just gonna set the blend mode to source, which is gonna completely overwrite the existing what's on the screen. And so if you don't want a transparency, it's going to block out the girl. I'm going to cover layers with the background layer and a tint layer and a dynamic layer in the future. However, just wanted to show you how this render and the canvas draw method does work for the future, but that's actually not the strategy we're going to take. I'm assuming that you just want a solid color that changes, based on certain parameters in your game, and at least as the base layer here. So maybe if you're just being a quick game and you just want a solid color. So we're gonna do a background component that extends a position component. This is all the way at the end of the file. It's not within the Flame Game class. And I've just set up a position component. I'm gonna not use the render within the Flame Game, but because the position component also has a render method, we can render the color in the position component. The main concept here is that the position component, which is part of Flame, does have its own render method. So you could have it draw the color within the position component instead of drawing it in your Flame Game. So now I'm going to declare a variable for the background color, and we'll specify as late because we're going to instantiate it within the onload. You probably could instantiate it above it. I'm going to instantiate in the onload method because I want to pull the size out. The size, again, it's from Flame Game, and that's part of, it's the size of the whole screen. So I'm going to put the position component, which I'm calling this background component, to the full size of the screen. And in the position component class that we created, we're rendering a color with draw color. Now we're going to add the background component in above the girl. So when you add the girl in, she's going to be on an upper layer. All right, so we'll add her in and just make sure that everything is rendered to the screen. So you do need that super.render canvas. And she's now on the screen. The pink background is a position component. So you don't need to do this unless you actually want to change the color of the background. And for the event to trigger the change, we're going to have it be the boundary. So when she hits one of the boundaries, we're going to change the color. In order to do this, we're going to break out a variable within the class for background component as the base color. And to draw the color, we're going to use that variable. So when we instantiate the background component, we can now access that property of the instantiated class. To make the change of the color a bit more fun in this demonstration, I'm going to use this random color. It's a very simple package, right? You could make random numbers for the colors yourself. It's just a convenience package that I'm going to add in to generate the random color with just one line. However, as you know, the colors are just numbers, so you don't actually need the package. It's just a little bit easier. It saves you a few lines of code. So using this random color package, when she hits the edge of the screen, we're going to change her color to, or sorry, the background color to a random color. So the first time in the size, left square bracket, 0 right square bracket here, that's the right edge of the screen. And the 0 is the left edge, right? So when she hits the screen, we're going to change the color. And just got to remember what the variable is. I called it background color. And the property of background color that we specified in the class is base background color. And we're going to set it to a random color. So by having it as this component, we can now access the property of the background color and then change it based on some action on the screen. And now every time an action takes place, in this case, she hits a boundary, the background changes. It's cool. In the next video, we'll set it up as layers, and we'll use a sprite background, so our graphic as the bottom layer, and apply a color as a tint. So you can, with that blend, you can blend the two colors together in many different ways. And we'll use a simple way. I'm assuming that maybe there's a space game or something, and when you hit a rock, you might want potentially the screen to appear as a slightly different shade for a brief time. So I'm going to use this same demo as the starting point for the next video, which will be on layers. I'll also zip up the code at this point and put it on the CodeCake site. And the link will be in the description. The CodeCake site is free. I'm just using it to help me organize all the different files. Subscribe to the channel for updates on the more than 50 videos I've made on Flame. The videos with source code are also available for free on Teachable, 100% free course if this is a hobby. In whatever way you choose to learn, make sure you have fun and unleash your creativity. Have a fantastic day.